Today's episode of the Shunned podcast is not the typical episode, as you'll see here in a minute. If you are partaking of this content on YouTube at the Shunned podcast channel, there will be at the end of the interview, if you stick around, there's going to be a montage that I put together that I think you might take something away from. If you're listening to this on a podcast platform, then at the end, you're just going to hear music. If you want to see the montage, I'll recommend that you go to the shunnedpodcast.com website, and I will have not only on the episodes page will I have the full YouTube video, but I'll also include the montage separately, just in case that's something that you'd like to watch at the end to honor the person who we're going to be discussing today. Today's episode, like I said, it's a bit different. And it's also pretty heavy, but there are some lessons that we can all take from this. There's also a person here to support, and I hope we'll do that. At the end of the interview, or what appeared to be the end of the interview, Cameron and I were talking off the record. He started sharing some stories, and both of us decided that those stories were worth sharing. And just a couple minutes, but there's definitely some lessons to be learned there as well. And I hope you'll stick around for that. So without further ado, let's go ahead and meet Sarah as Cameron tells her story. So Cameron, I know that this is a special episode. This is not necessarily the typical episode that I do. And I thought that it might be interesting to, I'll just give you a second here to introduce yourself and who you're here to speak on behalf of, and why maybe you're speaking on behalf of that person.
Well, my name is Cameron, and I'm here to talk about my late wife, Sarah, and really kind of give her story. Everybody can tell their own story, except for the last chapter. Somebody else has to say that.
Absolutely. So I guess, in talking about Sarah, I know you mentioned the last chapter. Well, let's I guess start back at the first chapter, as far back as we can go. I know it's not always easy to speak to someone's childhood when you weren't there, but is there anything that you can share with us about Sarah? If you know a little bit about who she was as a kid, what she was into, things like that.
As far as being a child, she was one of three. She was a very outgoing, energetic, happy child. She would tell me stories, about her childhood. Of course, she dealt with inner demons, bipolar, and different things. And when she was young, that really came to light. She knew something was going on. Nobody knew. Her parents didn't understand really what was going on at the time. But she would have her ups and her downs. And sometimes she would have a hard time sleeping. She would talk to me about how she would sometimes cry in the middle of the night, and she didn't know why. And but it was something she eventually, I think she was a teenager, got that kind of straightened out. And, but she had a big family, loving family, aunts and uncles and whatnot. And, no, I don't know a whole lot about her childhood other than a few stories that she told me. But for the most part, she was bubbling personality her entire life. So
Nice. Was she one of Jehovah's Witnesses her entire life? Was she born in, or did that happen at some other point?
She was born in. She told me this story about how she was double dipped. Her mom was studying before she was born and got baptized while she was pregnant with her. So yeah, she was a witness her entire life.
Gotcha. I like the double dip. My dad had to do, I think, the quadruple dip, but that was just because his foot kept popping out, so it was different.
Yeah, get down there, foot.
So I know there's only so much you can speak to as to her childhood, but obviously you could see who she was even back then, being bright and energetic and bubbly. So, as time went on, obviously, I guess you met her as an adult. Do you know anything about her life in the interim, in between, when she became one of Jehovah's Witnesses in her childhood and then meeting you?
Just a little bit. So she told me about like work. She worked right out of high school, or in high school, I think, when she started. But Circuit City.
Oh wow.
I don't know if you remember those being around, but
Oh
it
yeah, I
was
loved
funny.
it.
Yeah, she loved that job, and she'd tell me all about it and some of the stories and things that they'd do. She worked with a lot of people that were, pranksters and whatnot. But um, and then started another job, a little bit later at a bank, and very, very consistent at her work though. Like she stayed at one place until they closed up shop, went to another. Um, but she loved what she did, work wise. Personally, before I met her, she was actually dating another guy, and things were starting to kind of get serious until she had mentioned to him her bipolar disorder, and she was dropped like immediately. He just walked away, and that hurt her very much. And it was something that I could kind of see in her. She was very, um, she felt very insecure about her own shortcomings. So when I met her, she told me immediately. And she says, I want to tell you this just in case if you want to walk away, you better walk away now. And it was actually something that I was okay with. I had already spoke with her a number of times, and I got the feeling from her like, you're all right. I mean, it's okay. Everybody's got imperfections. And I appreciated her being upfront about it, but it was also something that a lot of people don't understand. When it comes to mental health, it's really not much different than physical health. I mean, none of us are perfect, and but because of her past and everything, she felt like it was a huge flaw. And, um, I'm kind of glad that she told me, but she, she had it under control. She understood what she needed to do for help. Everybody needs help. And so she was on medications for it. She talked with somebody. She was good. She was an amazing person. And I don't want to say regardless of what she dealt with, because I don't want to in any way suggest that that was a disability or handicap. That was just, she had something that she dealt with. I have stuff I deal with. So,
Yeah, we all do, right?
yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
I have ADHD.
I'm so sorry.
It's just one of those things, right? We
Yeah.
all have things that we deal with. People are anxious or depressed, or
Yeah.
um, this. Um, there can obviously there's a lot of stigma, sadly,
Mhm.
around mental and emotional health, and it's sad to see that somebody was just dropped in such a disrespectful manner
Mhm.
because of that. And I'm sure, I mean, I can speak to, I know it's not, I'm sure she was somewhat sensitive to that as well, because it's not easy to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses and to battle some of those things at times,
Yeah.
because there's not a lot of mental and emotional intelligence in the organization at times. And so they have a hard time discussing those things at times. And so it can make people feel really alone or different.
Mhm.
Um, it's just not a really open and accepting place for all of that.
Well, you're anticipated to have control over yourself,
Hmm.
and when you have, in some cases, something that impairs or affects your ability to do something, that's not really understood.
Hmm.
And so for her, some things were just a little bit beyond her control. She would have her ups and her downs. And, it's no different than if somebody breaks their leg, brother, you didn't meet your hours this month. My leg's broken. That's okay. That's not an excuse. There's a
Yeah,
telephone.
we don't get mad at diabetics because they don't produce insulin. We don't blame them and shame them for,
Yeah.
why don't you why don't you produce this chemical? Our brains are the same way. They produce some things
Mhm.
are too in too many quantities or too few or whatever the case may be. We're all different. And that should be part of the beauty of the kaleidoscope of life.
Mm.
And that's got to be okay. So I guess when and how did you two meet? How'd you meet in the first place?
Well, we were introduced online, but we met in person at the Kingdom Hall. And I didn't want this to be like some, long distance thing, but I lived near, southern Indiana,
Mhm.
and she lived near Chicago. So once we were, introduced, I said, "Hey, let me come up and let's have a meal. Meet you." And everything, of course, surrounded the organization. So I went to the Kingdom Hall and sat on the other side of the hall, and there was, of course, the stigma with if we meet online, but we thought to ourselves, well, we're technically meeting in person. And then after a short discussion, found out we have people that friends in common. So there were some friends that she had from childhood that ended up moving into my district, and I had met them. And actually, a friend of mine, when I was a child, ended up marrying a friend of hers. So small world. And so we just hit it off. Went to the meeting. She was a little too shy to come up to me immediately after. So, I went ahead and talked to a few other people, left, and, said, "Hey, if you want to, I'm going to be at, such and such restaurant." And so a little bit of the less of the pressure on her, of course, being at the congregation, eyes are on you. So it was kind of a little bit of a delicate trying to get to know each other because everything's scrutinized. And it's funny too, because when I was at the congregation, at the meeting, a sister was talking to Sarah and actually told her, "There's a brother from Indiana here. You should go talk to him." She still didn't have the courage to. So, but no, we went and grabbed some lunch and just really connected. We hit it off. Probably for the next few months, every weekend, I would drive up to the Chicago area, to spend the weekend, and I'm realizing this is becoming horribly expensive. I can't keep this up. So decided probably within 2 or 3 months or so, I had no ties holding me back. I went ahead and I took a new job, moved up there. So, okay, I'm in the area. She ended up finding me a place, actually, kind of helped me out with that. And it was probably 45 minutes or so away. So it wasn't like right next door. And she's like, "Okay, this is moving really quickly. We need just a little bit of space, make sure that, I'm like, I reassured her, "Don't worry about it. It's okay. If this doesn't work out, we can still be friends." I'm like, I have no expectations. I'm not pushing anything, but we meshed really well. And it was wonderful. It really was.
I like that. I guess you could see the pressure that one can feel. Not just the dating in the congregation is there. There's a lot of pressure there, but also with everyone watching your every
Mhm.
move. But also, her finding you an apartment up there. She could have felt, well, I moved him up here, so there's expectations or whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it was really great that you were able to tell her, "Hey, look,
Hmm.
we can part as friends. If this doesn't work out, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. We're not married, right?" You
Exactly.
know?
Exactly. So,
Yeah. But I'm sure that was a lot better than what it was, like 6 hours driving up to Chicago all the time.
yep, it was rough.
Yeah. That's a long drive. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I
so
ended up, it's really cool. I ended up actually living in this 3-story building on, was it the Chain of Lakes in Fox Lake, that was known for, it was really old. So it was known for, once upon a time, as a restaurant that Al Capone visited. So
oh, cool.
yeah, it was an interesting like story to it. And a lot of just side note, I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure there's a lot of that in Chicago. So
Yeah.
that's at least, it's cool to have an interesting story to the place you ended up.
Yeah.
Um, so how did things, progress? So I guess what were you, you know, your relationship grew, you eventually got married. So what was your wedding like? How was all of that for you? Or maybe even the proposal, if you have a story there.
Yeah, kind of an interesting one. ended up asking her parents for permission, and they were really happy and excited, and tried to help organize and orchestrate um, my plan. So I had this idea, and I don't know if I've seen it somewhere. I don't really know if somebody else did it. I thought it was kind of interesting, but so a friend of hers and her husband, we like to get together from time to time, and hang out, and go have a meal together, go play pool, go do karaoke, that sort of stuff. We were always seemed like we were always together. Her best friend. And so we had this idea of, let's go play pool. And in the middle of playing pool, I put my hand on the end of her cue stick, and I had the ring on the cue stick. So when it was her time to shoot, I'd let go and the ring would drop on her hand. And so her friend's husband had it all on video, and she was just staring at it. Like, I swear she just stared at it for at least 30 seconds. It may have been a minute. It was
It probably felt like 12 hours.
it totally took her by surprise, and it ended up turning out to be, like a big thing. Her parents were there. They were just kind of waiting around the corner outside, and so he came in, and we all just kind of celebrated. She said yes, and but yeah, she was totally taken by surprise. And she's the type of person that she wants to anticipate what's coming up. It's like she's got to have things figured out, and she's really nobody, and she's proud of this. Sarah was proud of this. Nobody could pull one over on her. She's never been able to have somebody surprise her, throw a surprise party. Nobody's ever been able to do it. So she was totally in shock. She didn't see it coming. Everybody was able to kind of zip the lip and act normal. So
that, I have to say, that is an awesome story. I like that. That is quite a move, dropping the ring down the cue stick. That's cool.
And also at the same time, right before I did that, though, I put on her favorite song. So yeah, I put her favorite song on the radio, and she says, "Oh, I love this song." So it was like, yeah, it all came together really cool. So.
Wow, that's awesome. And cool that you had the support of everybody else around you too during that time. That's a pretty cool thing to have. So I guess, how did it go? I guess, so did you have a long engagement? What was the wedding like?
It wasn't very long engagement. It was probably what, 6 to 9 months, something like that. It was, a little bit, enough to get it planned. So we ended up having a little bit of an issue with finding somebody to do the ceremony. So before meeting her, I had some people in my life that, were a little, let's just say, tried to cause me a little bit of a trouble. So because of, being in the witnesses, a little bit of a, rumor this or rumor that, nobody wanted to give our part, give our wedding talk. So asked different elders, and everybody just says, no, on my conscience, I couldn't do it. So we ended up finding a judge, retired judge, to do it, which was really awkward. Everybody came. I had people from Indiana, old friends, people around her area from multiple congregations, her family that weren't witnesses would all come. So we had a huge turnout, but no witness would give the part, and it was kind of a shame. But it was a beautiful wedding. We had it at the Hotel Baker in St. Charles, Illinois, and right there on the river. Absolutely gorgeous. It was a beautiful sunny day, and we had it outside. For the reception, it was an indoor 2-level oval room that was actually, if memory serves, I think it was oval, and it had a light up dance floor. So everybody was out on the dance floor. We even had an elderly brother that had a walker. He was out there just smiling, and it was a good time. It was a really good time for everybody. And we had a moment to thank everybody, and and to this day, very appreciative to everybody who was supportive, and to everybody who loved Sarah and wanted the best for her. She had very few good friends, but she knew a lot of people. But you know the difference between an acquaintance and a true friend. So she did have a few good friends, and yeah.
Sadly, I don't think many of us had a lot of true friends in the organization.
Yeah.
Uh, it was tough too. Hard to be friends with other people when they can't be themselves and you can't be yourself. You're trying to be someone that you're not, or you're trying to fit in, or there's all the scrutiny and the undercurrents and the undertones in every conversation, and
Mm.
everything is so fraught. You could always lose this friend to reproof or disfellowshipping or whatever the case may be. It is hard to have a lot of depth in a lot of the friendships. But certainly a lot of us could have used some true friends back in those days. Could have used some people for support. So I guess so you get married, you have this wonderful wedding and everything. I love the dance floor, the light up dance floor, and the image of the elderly man and his walker out there having a good time. Um, it's important. I think a lot of our lives as witnesses were somewhat joyless at times, and it's important to have those times of just pure joy and cutting loose, having fun. And I'm glad that they got to do that surrounding your wedding. That's a nice memory. So as time went by, I guess what'd you get to know about Sarah in your relationship as your relationship grew? I'm sure she had her personal struggles as well. How
Yeah.
did how did life go? What did you get to? What was your marriage like?
It was good. We moved into the basement of her parents' house for a little bit, and just to try and get our feet under us as a couple without the added burden of expensive rent and whatnot. So her parents were really great in that regard. Let us stay there. I think we were there for a few months to save up some money, and so we ended up getting our own place. It was an apartment across town, and it felt great. It felt really good. We were getting progress. We had plans, different things that we wanted to do. And then it seemed like out of nowhere things started falling apart. So with Sarah's bubbly personality and being very outgoing, um, and two, I don't want to like make this sound like it's everybody, but in that area around Chicago, but there's a little bit of a you go over to somebody's house, there's alcohol,
Hmm.
especially in the winter. It gets cold. I guess in a lot of cold places, sometimes it's a way to pass the time. But so for Sarah, she drank for many years, like just in her mind, normal, not a problem. Unfortunately, and she wasn't one to drink intentionally to get drunk. So I want to say that out front. But with the medications that she was on for her bipolar and her, she was set up already to be prone to having addictions of some kind, as kind of came along with the territory, but of having bipolar, from what I understand. So she developed a dependency to alcohol and had no idea. You know, she was such an outgoing person. She was always either having people over, going over to a friend's house, going out for dinner, that she just regularly had a drink or two. And it caught up to her to where she started to have an issue. And being that now she's married to somebody, I was very in her life, right? And I noticed, and I tried to have discussion with her about it. Of course, I don't know what's going on. I've never, been in this situation before. So I tried to approach it as gently as possible. And she didn't see it. She completely didn't see it. Um, the problem started to come in to where she wasn't necessarily drinking much, but she would almost act like she was drunk. And I would come home from work and she would be wasted. And when she came to, she swore, I only had this much, I wasn't drunk. No, I just took a nap. Of course, it's really hard to come to terms to, something like that, which is understandable. And it happened more and more frequently. We'd go over to somebody's house, witnesses, of course, and have a group over. And when she would have either too much to drink or the interaction with her medication, I don't know what it was, but it was definitely alcohol. I tried to just excuse us as quickly as possible and leave with her. So that way, hopefully nobody saw. And again, and I've got to stress this, she didn't know. She had no idea what was going on. So we sought help. I tried to get her friend involved, her best friend. And then another thing that I did looking back on it that I regret is, unfortunately, and I hate to say so, I sought help from the elders, thinking I'm trying to get her to see the issue. Now, some of the elders that we went to have known her most, if not her entire life. So they did have love for her for the most part. There was one elder that they ended up bringing in that was new to the congregation, and he was very abrasive. So the ones that knew her tried to lovingly help her see the issue as well at first. And she was reluctant at first, but she did go into rehab, which I'm very proud of her for doing. The way that rehab a lot of times works is they want to separate you from your situation as much as possible. So they had an opening at a facility in California. And so she spent about 3 months or so in California, if memory serves, give or take. It was a while. While she was out there, I ended up flying out for a few days, and they let her leave the facility with me to stay in a hotel for, about 3 days under my care, of course. And I was able to visit her, and spirits were high. She was doing well. She was happy. We went to the lake one day, went to, parks, sightseeing, and I was proud of her, even though she still wasn't really seeing that she had the issue. Come to find out later, during that time in California, they did a group trip to the pharmacy to get, um, you know, deodorant, shampoo, that sort of stuff. Get your stuff, And while she was there, somehow under the watch of the people in the facility, she somehow got alcohol and took it back to her rehab facility, at which point she would continue to drink, and they never found out. And it's like, okay, you're not learning, what you need to learn here.
Yeah, it's clear.
So
it's clear that this was, addiction. She needed it.
Exactly. It's something that's hard to break. It's hard to get through.
Oh, very much.
And from my perspective, being her husband and watching this, one of the hardest things is admitting that there's an issue. So she would drink and still say, I've got this. This is okay, and the cravings, she wasn't seeing as a craving. She was just saying, I just want something to drink. It helps. It's something I want. And so again, not trying to do anything wrong. And in her mind, it wasn't wrong. In her mind, I was a little oversensitive about it. I was making a big deal out of nothing. And I get that. I get where her perspective was on that.
Yeah, but if you're sneaking a bottle of alcohol from the pharmacy in rehab, it has gotten to a point,
Yeah.
at that point. And I'm sorry that it was that for her. A lot of people, when they escape into alcohol, again, maybe it did have to do with bipolar to some degree. Maybe she had some trauma in her past or something that affected her that she may not have even known at that time was in her past, because there are a lot of people that have things that have happened or whatever the case may be, but it's it's certainly something to have compassion for, because nobody wants to have a problem like that in their life.
Yeah, very true. So yeah, she came back home from her first rehab, and like a lot of people going through rehab, very few get a handle on it once, going for one time. So she came back and went into rehab one more time, but this time it was local. It was, the next county over, I believe. So it was fairly close. And in her second rehab, I believe, I have a number of different things that she's written down while in rehab, a number of different things that, kind of lending light on how she felt, what she was going through, her struggles. And of course, most of it I feel is just personal. There's this one thing that she was starting to get it. She's starting to get it. So she wrote this little thing called acceptance, and I don't know if it's okay if I share it.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
And again, there's personal things that she says that I will keep personal, but this I don't feel is anything inappropriate. So, and this is I don't know if
Oh,
that
it's
shows up
not
at all.
showing because of the background or something, I think. But
Okay.
is it just a notebook, a handwritten notebook, or?
Yeah, it's a handwritten notebook. It's it's entitled Acceptance.
Okay.
My first experience with true acceptance was January 10th, 2017. My sponsor at the time told me to read pages 417, paragraph 1 in Alcoholics Anonymous. I struggle with this concept daily. It's as if I came out of the womb a control freak. Since childhood, I've struggled with accepting situations, people, places, things, etc. I was raised in a religion where not all things and actions were accepted. Certain things in life the human race finds hard to accept, such as death, poverty, famine, disease, war. We have been conditioned to fight against acceptance of such things and are taught to make a change. I, however, take it to the extreme and I feel I need to change and control all in my life. My life would be a lot better and more manageable if I go against my natural tendency and start to accept things for what they are. For example, I can't change the fact that I was abused growing up, that I was molested as a child. Should these things have happened? No. But then again, me living in acceptance of these situations frees me of self-pity and anger. I can move on with my life and accept that those situations made me who I am today. Another example is me accepting myself as an alcoholic. Accepting this fact frees me of shame and helps me surrender and give it over to my higher power to help me. I also need to be in acceptance of those I associate with and surround myself with. Sometimes my choice or our circumstance. Everyone has a story. Everyone has a story and something that I don't know why this is choking me up. Where was I? Everyone has a story and something that makes them who they are. A story that makes them fit into society. I can't change anyone, and the moment I realize that is the moment I accept and free myself of stress and anxiety. I can only control my actions. Sometimes I can't control my situation, especially in recovery. I need to accept help and guidance. If I was to do that, my chance of success would greatly increase. I need to give myself over to the program and listen to those who have years of sobriety. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems today. If I continue to work on acceptance, I will be a lot happier and successful in my sobriety and relationships and life. So
It choked me up. So I understand why it choked you up. Um, you're uh, you're reading from someone who felt a lot of shame, and unfortunately, shame is fuel for addiction. Shame is absolutely addiction fuel. It hurts so many people, and I guess I didn't know. So she was molested as a child,
she never went
and
into that
so
with me, so I don't know the details of that.
yeah, yeah. But whatever, regardless of the details, these are again the reasons that people sometimes escape into a drug or alcohol or a religious belief or a lot of things. People find a lot of things to escape into at times when they are hurting and when they feel a lot of shame and they're trying to feel okay. And I wrote down the part where she said she felt like she came out of the womb a control freak. And oh, that one hits home. And I think hits home for a lot of people because the honest truth is, if we were raised in an out of control environment, an environment where we couldn't be who we were, and like she said, so many things were not accepted, then, and in fact, so many things were shamed instead of accepted, I think it creates a need for control for most of us because we've been out of control our whole lives. We just want to control something. And sometimes in that out of that desire, we end up creating something that is actually out of control, trying to find something to control. And then we feel shame about that as well. And then that shame makes us feel bad. And then it's just this self-perpetuating cycle. And it's yeah, it's just really it's hard to look at the truth about how the truth hurt so many people, and obviously some things had happened above and beyond that as well that had deeply hurt her, and yeah, who wouldn't have a tear in their eyes hearing that? She deserves compassion and love, and she would, and also it's beautiful that she was starting to see.
yeah, she was, and there were other things that she had written while in rehab where she talks about how this shame was humbling for her. Of course, when I mean, yeah, that was very difficult for her to accept about herself. How many of us want to say, I have a failing or I fall short in this XYZ. And so she came back from rehab, of course, a little down, and depression doesn't lend itself really to positive things. So she came back out of rehab understanding there's an issue, but she also still couldn't stop drinking. It was around that time we got a puppy, a little Chihuahua. I still have him. His name was Cloud originally, but it's funny. He's a black Chihuahua, and I'm thinking, Cloud, why would somebody name him a Cloud? I didn't get it. He didn't respond to it. So we tried to rename him, and just kind of a lighthearted. What's that?
Was he named Cloud because he's like a black cloud that follows someone around?
That was my original reason for thinking that's a horrible name. So it went to the shelter, and he was the most chill dog in the shelter. Got him in the car, and he would not stop running around. Like, he bounced off the walls, window to window, the entire drive home. And it was funny. Sarah's all like, "Oh my God, what did we get?" And we get home.
Hey, Sarah was energetic, right? So
she had a lot of spunky energy. It was a he was a good thing to have in her life, I think. Was So this is another thing too. She couldn't have children, and that was something that we just thought that having something. Okay, let's have a fur baby. Let's bring something home. We needed a family. I thought maybe she needed a hobby, and she agreed. She needs something to kind of keep her mind occupied and busy that she enjoys. So that's why we got a dog. But he's turned out to be such a little pain in the where. And I told the dog that, and I called it like the acronym pain in the A. Okay, PETA. His ears perked up, and I said, "You gotta be kidding me!" So his name is PETA, and oh, he's a sweetie though. He was so full of energy. Like he would truly run down the hallway full speed, and when he tried to turn, he would slide into the wall and smack it so hard. So we tried different things, to have her have more happiness, in her life, and brought a puppy in, and he was good. He was helpful quite a bit. She would take a lot of pictures of him, take him for walks, take him for a drive, and yeah, she liked PETA, but she still had that depression lurking in the background, and still would drink, unfortunately. So she recognized that there was an issue though, and the real big issue became when she was hiding it. So we didn't keep alcohol in the house, but she would get a bottle of wine, and I would find empty bottles of wine tucked away in the back of the cupboard. And she would go to work and, drink a little out of the Gatorade bottle and top it off with vodka, at work. And she worked at a bank. That's something became really dicey. And of course, the story going there too was she was actually given a promotion, and it was a promotion she did not want. It was a promotion that reset her goals, I guess, if you would say. She had to start over with a completely new book of business. She wasn't making her numbers. It was something that she didn't want. That stress got to her. And it was short-lived where she was drinking at work, but she realized this isn't good. And we talked about it. And she ended up actually quitting her job to try and alleviate that stress out of her life, because it became a huge one. So we were trying to make strategic moves in her life to help. And, we're at a point now where she's accepting that she has a problem. She's making changes in her life. But the hiding the alcohol was something that at the time I'm thinking, gosh, she still needs help. So the elders wanted to talk again, and it was a topic. It was some information that was brought up. So because she still hadn't gotten control of it, they had decided to disfellowship her. And strangely, she took it very well at first. She asked, I need to know a time frame, because she was such an outgoing person. This was either going to crush her or help her. And she said that she needed kind of a goal to reach for. And the elders said, almost verbatim, they said, you are doing something that is prohibited in the scriptures, but you are only hurting yourself. It's not like you killed somebody. It's not like you are breaking up a family with, sexual immorality or anything like that. You're not cheating on your husband. It's like you're hurting yourself. If you can get this under control, let's talk in 6 months. So she had a goal. She had 6 months, and in her mind, she's like, okay, I've got this 6 months. I can get through this in 6 months. And she went back into rehab after being disfellowshipped. And this was part of her thing. She wanted to. She's like, I'm approaching this with a whole new mindset. So she goes back into rehab for a third time. And but she's disfellowshipped now. So her parents cut her off, her sisters, her friends. And this outgoing person who needed support and help is now doing it solo. And she's actually approaching it with such optimism. So everything that I could do to support her, I was actually excited for this. This is a fresh start. This is a new start. Let's get this going, and we did. We kind of things changed over the next few months. Her father, who was living, in the same area, her parents lived like literally 15 minutes from us. He ended up losing his job, and they were a huge anchor in her life. So her sister lived in Wisconsin. Actually, both of them lived in Wisconsin. So a little bit of a drive. And when her father lost his job, he ended up getting a new job, but with a competitor whose location was, in another state. So they ended up actually moving while she was in rehab back in California. And so Sarah and I would talk regularly. And with this big change and with the fact that she's out, we discussed starting over, potentially moving ourselves. She agreed to moving to the Carolinas. It's further south, a little warmer, better weather. She's never lived anywhere else besides around Chicago. And we're thinking this is good. This is good. So I ended up packing up our house. I had a friend of hers give me a hand for a few hours, and we packed up a U-Haul and drove down there. And she was actually coming out of rehab, I think 2 days after I moved everything. So I unloaded the U-Haul as quickly as I could, returned it, and she flew in. So I went to pick her up from the airport, and we had this cute little place. It was a cabin right on the South Carolina, North Carolina line. And it was down in a valley, technically a rainforest. Absolutely gorgeous. We had a creek in the backyard, um, and she was so excited, so positive, so ready to go. So, and I think this was approximately 3 months after she was disfellowshipped. We unpacked, put everything up the best we could really quickly, and jumped into a completely new life. I started going to work. We went to a new congregation down there. It was actually in North Carolina. And, just trying to be positive. Everything was good. She was actually good. She wasn't drinking. She was looking for a job herself, trying to stay busy with arts and crafts. And so an additional 3 months later, we request that, she talk with the elders. And so they say, well, we'll stop by. We'll talk to your husband. So they come and they talk to me, actually. And I'm wondering why they're talking to me. And it's discussed that, and it kind of blew my mind. They said, we're not even going to consider bringing her back until 12 months. And I asked why. And they said, if we bring her back too soon, we're going to be questioned by the organization, the society. The branch will reach out and ask, why did we allow her back so soon? And I told them what was discussed at the other congregation, and their response was, well, it's not the other congregation's decision. That news crushed her. And for no reason. There's no reason for that. It is an arbitrary time frame that put this outgoing social I watched her collapse.
And it started because they they reneged on their agreement. They said, if you do this, you get this.
Yeah. So she had a goal, and everything was looking good. It's like the sunny day that all of a sudden turned into a thunderstorm. It's like, now, to be fair, these elders in that congregation didn't tell her that. So I get that. But they wouldn't even reach out to the other elders. They would not call them. They would not consult with them. They would not get their opinion. And they just insisted 12 months. We're just not even going to talk about it for 12 months. And they said 12 months doesn't guarantee that she's going to be back. We're just not even going to talk about it for another 6 because it's 6 months have elapsed.
So are you saying that they would not even talk to her, period?
Correct.
So they were
Correct.
going through you, and they were going to continue going through you if any discussions need to be had until a year?
Yeah.
They wouldn't even afford her the human decency of sitting down with her and talking to her about this, or I don't know, reading her. I mean, if they believe what they believe, if they believe that they could read her some scriptures that would reach her heart or help her, why wouldn't they at least do that?
You're making the assumption that they're considering her a human being, that
I
they would
know, I know.
respect
They
that
don't.
she's a person. No, they wouldn't. Just
She
absolutely
was a
nothing.
rule and a regulation
Well, so
at
I
best.
think I believe that there's a recommendation about that time frame, but this goes back into the mindset that you have to serve your time,
Mm-hmm.
and it's and another consideration too is there's a lot of reasons why people do different things. Well, not reasons why, but there's a lot of different things that people can do to get themselves into this situation. There are crimes, there are sins, and there are illnesses. And that's a mindset that the organization as a whole and elders do not consider, that alcoholism and addiction are diseases, that they are a disorder, they are an illness, something that you have to fight against. It's not that they're a bad person. So I mean, yeah, any group of people, a family, a group of friends, nobody wants to just sit idly by and while somebody's addicted to something. So it's understandable that you don't want that person addicted to them. The difference is, and I've come to realize this myself since, is that somebody who's addicted to something needs support. An addict left on their own is a death sentence. I mean, how many people can go unsupported and pull themselves out of that pit? So she was left in that pit. And the drinking started again. And I would come home to her passed out, completely unresponsive. And within a few months, she actually started developing I'm kind of focusing on this. There's um, I feel like I've jumped around a little bit. I don't know. Like I've missed different things. Like before getting this bad news, how, again, how she was trying so hard, and I don't know. Yeah.
Well,
There,
I would say I'm not sure if, I mean, I'm sure there's things you could say,
yeah,
but I'm sure that it's just hard to walk away from that period of time where she was trying so hard. And I don't think there's anything you can probably say to convey how hard she was trying and how sincere that was during that time. Uh, Words probably don't do that justice, and so it's I think it's you know, sometimes there just isn't enough to say.
I derailed my train of thought by thinking back on how much she tried.
Yeah.
So, and different things that, it's like experiences. And of course, I could go on probably for hours talking about the experiences and the times that, she was happy, and the times that she was trying, and the times that she was optimistic. And, so I'm just thinking back. I'm jumping kind of into the situation that we're discussing, but I'm being sidetracked by all the things that were good, that were efforts that she, had made in her recovery, and
Can I
the
ask,
happy times. Yeah.
was there a did she ever, because I know you said she had a sponsor, did she ever reach any milestones that she was really proud of or anything like that?
Well, she kept getting the chips, and I think I don't know the chips numbers, but she kept getting a few, and she did have a sponsor, and they they kept in touch, but it was, kind of a long distance thing, and they would just check in, and but yeah, she kept, from what I understand, I think she kept in touch too with a few of the people that she went to rehab with.
Did
And
did she have any dreams or anything, or things that she was really excited about that she thought were going to happen when she, I don't know, whether it's when she got reinstated or just things, hey, I'm going to get healthier and then we're going to A, B, C, or D, something like that?
she there were many things, like her family and friends were good witnesses, and they cut her off, and that gave her a little bit of an uneasy feeling, because her younger sister was disfellowshipped for something, and I won't go into detail, but Sarah kept in touch with her and supported her and talked with her the entire time. And so the same sister cut her off when Sarah was out. Her best friend did the same thing, would just, wouldn't talk to her. There were times where Sarah was down and she would reach out to her mother, and her mother just wouldn't respond. She would text me saying, Sarah's trying to get a hold of me, tell her to stop, you know. And so when she was trying to have this goal, and there was a song on the radio, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was it resonated with her, something about she wants to come back, and she wants to, tell everybody, screw you, I did it, I conquered this, and I did it without you, and she's like, so this feeling of, I'm going to be on top again, I'm going to be good, I'm going to, it's like that kind of drove her a little bit. um, but she had these goals. She wanted to get another job. She didn't want to be in banking anymore. She didn't want to deal with any of that high stress or anything. She was trying to get a job working with animals, something that she enjoyed, or something artistic. And this, I think, so every situation that drives people, that happens in their lives, that affects their story, there are so many things that actually influence and contribute to feelings and actions and responses. So not only was she being shunned by everybody, not only was she starving for attention and being social, she couldn't find a job. She tried, she put out hundreds of resumes all over the place, and found that nobody wanted her. And after a while, that kind of also hit a sensitive spot in her. So she had a lot of downtime that she didn't have the motivation, started developing no motivation to do hobbies. And so she would vegetate in front of the TV, and she'd fall back into that depression. And when she was told that she won't have an opportunity even to be reinstated for 12 months, that was the final blow that really knocked her down. And yeah. So what many people don't know that she went through during this time, very few people. I don't think anybody truly knows. I've mentioned this to a few, that she was struggling, but nobody knows truly what she was going through. Within a couple of months, she started not sleeping. What's that called, where you don't sleep all night?
Insomnia.
Insomnia. Thank you. Yeah. So she developed insomnia every night, and it was difficult because she could only take cat naps, 20 minutes here, there. That's all she could do. She couldn't stay asleep. Not to save her life, take melatonin, nothing would work. And we kind of thought that this is, what's going on here? This is happening every night. And excuse me. That strangely turned over and flipped the switch, complete 180, to where she would go to sleep, but she would sleepwalk every night. This happened all of a sudden. And so she's seeing a psychiatrist, she's talking to medical people, and it's they can't quite figure it out either, but they don't have all the pieces. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, this is just a manifestation of your turmoil that you are in. And she was so depressed. And took a little bit of a toll on me as well, but it wasn't me that it was taking the brunt of it. It was her. I would come home from work and find her drinking a little bit or passed out, but it's that's the only time she was down. And she was so tired. When she would sleepwalk at night, it would wake me up, so I would walk with her around the house if I was able to wake up. And for the most part, I did. I would wake up to either her drawing a bath, and she's in the bathtub sleepwalking. I'd have to turn the water off. I'd have to empty the water out and get her out of the tub, before, and I'm scared to death that she's going to slip right in and drown. That happened more than once. I actually woke up to her driving back into the driveway while sleepwalking.
Oh,
and that terrified me, because she got her keys and she drove sleepwalking and somehow made it back. So I started to hide her keys, so she couldn't do that. She would fall in her sleep. One time I woke up to a loud thud, and she fell face first into the dining room table. It was a little coffee table, smashed the table, and really hurt her knee. So, there towards the last probably month, she couldn't hardly walk. We took her to the emergency room. They said she didn't break anything. It could have been a soft tissue injury, but they tried to schedule for her an MRI or CT or something, but she could only get around on crutches. So when I went to work, she could barely move from one place to the other. And it's she was in physical pain. She was in emotional pain. She couldn't sleep. And she attempted suicide a number of times. And it's hard to understand the feeling that you get when somebody that you love is in such an emotional state that they want to end their life. That you can tell there's something changes with their demeanor. One time I came home and she just wasn't herself. And she wouldn't say what it was, but I remember, without getting my attention, she took a glass cup, went to the bathroom, locked the door, and smashed the cup. And I had to run and kick that door in to keep her from cutting her wrists. And nobody knows truly what she went through and where she was. That it was, I wish that I was enough. Like, I wish I could have, I wish that I could have taken it away, even for a day. You know, I couldn't. It was taking a toll on me too.
I think that everybody in that situation, anyone who is in a relationship with someone that is struggling at that level, wishes that they could take it away. I think Sarah said it eloquently in her own journal that you read from earlier about acceptance. And she talked about how, she said something about not trying, about realizing that she had to accept certain things and that she couldn't save others. And that is a sad reality. We can love others really deeply. We can want the best for them, but sometimes they're just hurt and they have problems. You know, again, like you said earlier, take it to a physical problem, which obviously this caused physical issues, but take it to a physical problem. Say it was cancer or some other, heart problem or something like that. We all wish, of course, you wish you could take it away, but you can just you can't be enough to save someone with cancer or a heart problem, a physical ailment, and just, I mean, because it's easier for us to see, like, it's not on us to be enough to save someone when they have a physical problem, when they have a mental and emotional and trauma based. And I mean, there's so much going on here. Like you said earlier, it's complex. It's not a single thing. There's a lot here in the storm. It's sadly a storm that you can't, it's not up to you. And sometimes that individual, just like with a physical problem, they're a physical ailment, they're not going to be able to overcome it. And we all succumb to different things. And I'm just really, obviously there's everything she was going through, and you mentioned it, but be very remiss if I didn't say, you went through a lot too. And hugs all around to everybody. And there's just so much pain in this situation. And you obviously did a lot. And I hope you can see that. Appreciate that about yourself.
I appreciate you saying so. I had a hard time. I think that during that time, yeah, it was hard. It was definitely hard.
I can only imagine.
So yeah.
So you did. You were there for her, obviously, and you did. I mean, you walked with her when she was sleepwalking. You hid the keys to try to take care of her. You got her out of baths. You kicked down doors to get to her. So I think it's safe to say you certainly showed up for her. How did things? I know that there's more to the story. How I'll let you decide how you want to get there.
Well, I'd say the last month and a half or 2 months was daily sleepwalking for her and daily exhaustion because, when you're sleepwalking, you don't get rest. And a few nights I would sleep in the other room just to, I reached the end. I'd sleep in the guest room. And one night I went to bed in the guest room. I remember it's September 21st, 2018. And as I'm trying to go to sleep, she went to bed a little before me. Shortly before she went to bed, we had this discussion. I didn't have a lot more to give, leading up to that. And she asked me why I'm not giving her much attention anymore. And that really kind of sat bad with me. And I'm thinking, I don't mean to. I'm sorry. But she asked me that, and then I'm watching TV, and she goes to bed, and I'm just. I stay up for probably another half an hour, and I go to bed myself, but I go to bed in the other room. Before I can go to sleep, I hear her scream. And she screams no. And I'm thinking, is she having a bad dream? What's going on? And I don't get out of bed. I don't check on her. And she screams again, no, like really like draws it out. Like a full breath and completely exhales her entire breath and screaming no. And then it's quiet, and I go off to sleep and thinking nothing else of it other than she must have just had a bad dream. I don't hear anything else. I don't think she's up walking around. So I go to sleep. And when I wake up, and it's really strange because when I wake up, I feel it and I think to myself, this feels weird. It's like I can't describe why, and when I say that, I'm not just like trying to exaggerate the situation. I remember specifically thinking something's not right. I get up, I go to the restroom, I go into the kitchen, I see Sarah laying on the floor. And at first I don't realize what's going on. I just think that she went to sleep there. Until I realize that she's blue. And she's got foam at the corner of her mouth and her eyes are partly open. I freak out. I absolutely freak out. And the next little bit is a blur. But I didn't have good cell service at the house. We were deep in the woods, so I ran outside. And I call 911. I'm standing in the street. I get a signal and I call 911. And I'm telling them she's not responding. I try to move her and she doesn't respond. I've never seen a body before. And they say, we're sending somebody. This is how you do CPR. I say, I might lose you. I say, do this, right? So I run in there. Of course, I lose signal. And I'm trying to do CPR. I feel her ribs break as I do chest compressions. And I cannot tell you how exhausting that is to do chest compressions for even 5 minutes. But they show up pretty quickly, the EMS. And they have me go outside while they take a look at her. And one of them comes out and says, it looks like she's been gone for a few hours. So there's nothing that you could do. So They come in with an investigator, and I have to sign a paper, and because it's they don't know what happened. They couldn't tell. So they do an investigation. They go through the house. They're checking everything in there. I mean, for a moment, one of the investigators starts interrogating me, asking me, all sorts of questions, and I'm like, what? An autopsy later reveals that it was a combination of the medications that she was on. She was prescribed high doses. That didn't help the fact that also she had alcohol in her system. That didn't help the fact that she laid down on the floor in a position that hindered her breathing. If any one of those things was not there, she wouldn't likely have been fine. She would have likely been fine. She would have likely pulled out of it. She would have. So they called it positional asphyxiation with contributing factors of medication and alcohol.
And so, I mean, first, I'm sorry that happened. It sounds silly even saying I'm sorry. The words don't touch the depth of the situation. But it's a really it's not obviously it's a sad end to a beautiful life, and I'm sorry that it had to go that way for both of you. I can only imagine, the moments and that are etched into your soul. And I can only imagine how difficult all of that was then, but also how difficult it is to carry around today. And I guess it begs the question, so this all happens, and she was still disfellowshipped.
She was.
So, so support wise, did you get any? So I guess then it was left to you to tell people and to spread the word. Was there support? What happened? Or I guess what was like for you?
It was strange because over the following couple weeks, I did get a little support, but from people that I had known, from Indiana, from Chicago area. But that day, the first person that I call is my mother. And she, of course, is back in Indiana. So she asks if I had reached out to the brothers. And I said no. And so just to kind of give some context, after she was told it'd be a minimum of 12 months, I just stopped going because I was in a funk. And come to find out, it's like the cognitive dissonance that I was having, thinking this is just challenging everything that I thought was true about a loving group of people. And so I was having a hard time with that. So I hadn't been in a while. And so I ended up calling an elder that I was okay with, And I said, that told him what happened. And so he said that he'll be right over. I'll come to find out, he arrived with the other elder, which was the coordinator, who was the one that told her a minimum of 12 months. I didn't want him there. I didn't invite him. He ended up coming on his own because, of course, I guess everything goes through him. I don't remember much of what was said other than the coordinator telling me that if I ever want to see my wife again, I need to come back to the congregation. And in that moment, I saw red. I somehow had the self-restraint to just glare at him and nothing else. But I cannot believe that he just said that. Calloused and whatever.
It's inhuman.
No love, no consideration, no concern. She wasn't a person to him. She's a bargaining piece. She's the carrot to dangle in front of me. So that was just the wrong thing to say. And in myself, he was the very reason that she died. I hold him personally responsible. I personally view that the organization's policies on shunning and disfellowshipping partly is unscriptural, and I'm not going to get into this, but it's taking things out of context to justify cutting people off. That just because they do something that you don't like clears their conscience to just kick them out of your life. It's damaging.
Yeah, it's about control. It's not about love. And you're
Yes.
seeing that the lack of love in the way that you're being addressed afterward.
I used to believe that it was love. I used to believe
I did too.
Yeah. So it's funny. It's like it makes no sense once you kind of get a glimpse as to what it truly does, the damage caused, the pain, the hurt. Once you see that and truly see it, there's no way that that's love. I mean, you take that into a normal relationship. You know, if your spouse does something that might even be bad, when is the silent treatment acceptable? You know, there's a reason why they call it emotional abuse. It doesn't help anybody.
Nope, it doesn't. At best, it's extorting someone emotionally.
So that just really smacked me inside of the head, this situation, and smacked me hard.
Oh, I can only imagine. So was that the end of the support that you got?
I actually ended up having to, I went through therapy for PTSD. I had a hard time carrying on my responsibilities at work, so I resigned. I moved temporarily back to Indiana to try to figure things out, and I stayed with a brother who I consider him like a father. You know, my father died many years ago, and so I stayed with him and his wife for a little while, and the support was there initially. You know, the letters or the cards, the comments, the support. I left it to her parents to organize the funeral, and they informed me that they didn't feel comfortable having like an actual talk given. And I'm thinking that's ridiculous. I'm sorry. It's like I can't wrap my head around why is that okay? And their reasoning is, well, we don't want to offend anybody. I'm thinking, who would you offend? Who would you offend by not having a talk? Oh, and also they didn't want to put out pictures of her. And I drew the line. I'm sorry, that is not respectful of her. That's not respectful for me. And so it ended up, they reserved the spot for like 3 hours or something. And it was a meet and greet. People could come and go as they wanted and just talk. And I'm like, that's not what I want. So I ended up actually calling up Sarah's best friend and a few other people that knew her and knew me. And there's probably 20 of us that, I drove up to Chicago for a gathering at a friend's house. And we put up pictures of Sarah, and we talked about Sarah. And I felt that was more positive, more respectful. And even though it still wasn't a funeral, I was actually deprived of having a proper funeral for my wife. So,
That is really messed up. And it's saying I won't have a talk for her. It's not just not respectful, it's absolutely disrespectful.
yeah.
And it just shows how they write human beings off in certain ways. And it's really really horrible to view humans like that. um I mean, like, we could get into we could get into the farce of what they call a memorial service for someone that has nothing to do with the person and everything to do with a sales pitch for Jehovah's Witnesses. It's, that it's not designed to honor the individual. They have recently made some paltry changes to that. And I do think some people do take it upon themselves or work things out in some way to have a more fitting memorial, to be fair. Yeah. But that's not what it's for, and it's not what it's been for all these years. And I'm sorry that you were denied that opportunity. I love that. I do love what you did. I love that you went and celebrated her with her friends. I think that's an amazing thing to have done in that situation. It may not have been the quote proper or typical formal funeral or memorial or whatever you want to call it, but that's really a great thing that you all were able to do for her. And I know that you didn't get that chance, and I know that you've provided pictures, and there's artwork that Sarah has done. There's artwork that Sarah has done sitting behind you right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, absolutely beautiful things that Sarah did. And I know that, and so we're obviously going to have some of this up on the website, and we'll have links to different things there and in the show notes for the podcast and on the website. But I want to, also make sure I give you a chance. If there's something that you would want to say about Sarah, what it was that you loved about her. If you want, if you were going to have a proper funeral or memorial service where you got up to actually eulogize her, talk about her and what you loved about her, what her friends and family loved about her, maybe a story or two, something that really encapsulated on some level who Sarah was and is in the minds of so many people who knew her. What would you say? Would you like to do that?
Maybe briefly. She was the light of the room. She was not very tall. She was rather short, but she had a 7-foot personality. She was always, like, not always, but in many cases, especially when she was having fun, when she was around friends, she was 110%. She was a presence that it's just hard to describe. I've never known anybody like her. She had a lot of love. She had a lot of personality. She loved art. She loved to be creative. And despite her struggles, she was truly one of the most amazing people I've ever known. And she was misunderstood by many. And she just fortunate, really, to have had her in my life. So,
And now she's part of other people's lives. Anyone who's watching this, anybody who's listening, now can carry on the story of Sarah. And it's just a story. We don't know her. I know that we don't know her at that level, and we will never get to experience the presence that she obviously had. But she obviously brought a lot to a lot of people. Sadly, she was misunderstood, and it's really sad that she was so misunderstood. But there were people that did understand her. You are obviously one such individual. You took the time to get to know her and understand her, and now you are speaking up and helping other people to understand her. So she is finally understood. And, maybe we'd never know who will listen to this. Maybe there are some people out there that for the first time will have a chance to understand a part of someone that they thought they knew. And, we're all just human beings. Who of us doesn't have shortcomings, struggles? I mean, to struggle is part of the human experience. I don't know why we have to act like it doesn't exist. It does. It exists. And it's back to Sarah's beautiful writings earlier. It's about acceptance. And this is an opportunity for acceptance for Sarah's story, for everyone who's listening. And then you never know who might have known her, who might listen. It might help them to accept some things as well.
and if excuse me, if I could say too, that acceptance isn't about saying that something's okay. It really goes beyond that. And that's why when people have an issue, accepting it, they say acceptance is the first step towards recovery. You're not saying it's okay, but you can address something. And just because that you accept that something is the case doesn't mean that you condone it. It does not mean that you say it's okay either. She accepted that she had an issue, and she was working on that issue. And if more people had that view, if more people had that take, you accept that somebody has a fault. Help them with that fault. Don't walk away from them.
My favorite definition of acceptance is that acceptance means letting go of the hope that things could have been different. Yeah. And to say that things could have been different would be to say that Sarah wasn't doing her best. And that is a very unfair statement that not one of us can make or has the right to make. And it's sickening that so many people would make that statement, because no one else had to walk a mile in Sarah's shoes. No one else dealt with what Sarah dealt with. Oh, the only person on this planet who has had or ever will have walked in Sarah's shoes is Sarah. No one else can make any claims about that. And so we have to let go of the hope that things could have been different. Obviously, Sarah was struggling, but part of the struggle is the fact that she was trying so damn hard, right? So to discount that with a simple judgment is so short-sighted. It's sadly what we do as humans. It's easier to label people good and bad and put them in categories and ship them off and not worry about them anymore. It takes a lot more strength, and it's a lot more expansive love to love someone while they're hurting, while they're struggling, and while they're fighting so hard against something that we can't save them from, and that, they may or may not be able to. Again, we all succumb to something in the end. And so to properly love Sarah is to send her off with that acceptance that she was doing her damnedest. She tried so hard. Look, I can speak to a moment in my life where I went before the elders. I didn't want to be here anymore. Thought every day of not being here anymore. And had I not had my wife in the car with me at all times, probably would have done something. And when I went to the elders, because I couldn't keep up with Jehovah's Witnesses, I was blamed for that. And I was told that I didn't care enough. I cared so much, I wanted to do myself in because I felt so bad about who I was in light of who Jehovah's Witnesses wanted me to be. And when I told my wife that they said that I clearly didn't want it bad enough, she said, honey, you want it so much that you don't want to be here anymore if you can't have it. And the Jehovah's Witnesses really miss the mark. They really absolutely just don't understand. They don't understand what it is to be human or to have human struggles, and they don't make allowances for that. And it's everything is black and white. You're righteous or unrighteous.
That's very true.
You're going to live or you're going to die. That's it. And there's no acceptance. There's nobody cares who the individual is and how much they struggle. Again, part of the struggle being that they do care and that they are working really hard on something. So I'm so sorry that in the end, this was a battle that, we're not all going to win all the battles, but Sarah won them for a long time. Sarah struggled against something, and Sarah won day by day at different times. And we have to give credence to everything that she put into this, because to do otherwise is just so shallow.
She fought the good fight. She was brave, and she gave everything that she had. And and with that, too, I truly want to thank people who did have kind things to say, and there were many. Good. Many witnesses, many brothers and sisters, many people, period, reached out. And I'm not discounting that, not at all. And even though I've seen the pain that caused by a decision made in the congregation, it doesn't mean that I have any ill will against those who have been so kind.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the kind words and the kind thoughts. I still have the cards. So
that's cool.
This is such a difficult situation because not many people, and especially not many people, I'll just say that not many people are in a situation like this. And when you lose somebody, until you lose somebody really close to you, and I've lost people, I've lost, grandparents and whatnot. I've a sister of a friend of mine passed when I was young in a car accident, but I didn't know her closely. I can't associate this pain to somebody very close to me. And being in this position, kind words and just knowing that people are thinking about me proved to be hugely helpful. Hugely. Kind words about Sarah, especially because of the unique situation that she was in. If I would to change anything, and it might kind of go against what some people think when they're trying to be supportive of somebody losing somebody. All the support is up front. It's easy for people to forget and to move about their life in a month or 2 months or 3 months. As hard as this hit, I had support at first. That was so valuable, but we need to remember that the loss is pain that lingers. It's easy to be forgotten later when the quiet and the empty is there. So it's the only thing that I would have asked would have been different, is just to have a little continued support. And it's not that anybody did anything wrong. It's hard to think about the pain that somebody else is going through at the times table that they might be going through it. Witnesses have a hope of a paradise. So in many cases, it's dismissed quickly. Well, you're going to see them soon. Don't worry about it. But that doesn't change the fact of the situation now. I don't want to put my life and emotions on hold for the future. I'm living now. And Sarah was living. And when her life came to an end quickly, I'm dealing with this now. This is when we lose people, we have a void for a while.
Well, yeah, you have a void for the rest of your life. Grief isn't a process where you neatly accomplish going through denial, bargaining, anger, depression, acceptance. It's not this neat little tidy package where you do steps 1 through 5 and look, I'm done and now I'm whole again. No, that loss, you will always have experienced that loss. That doesn't go away. You learn to manage grief better. You heal through grief, but grief isn't something you leave behind. Grief is something you take with you. Yeah. It's a process. It's the grieving process, and it's a process that you'll take with you your whole life. Because Sarah will always matter to you.
And it's different for everybody. Yeah. And I know many other people are grieving too. I know her family members and friends. I know for them it may be different from me, but I know that this is also avoiding their holes. When Sarah passed, she left a hole, I'm sure, in many people's lives, and everybody knew her differently from their perspective. And so it's very unique to everybody. Some people are probably okay, I can only speak for me. And the hardest part for me after immediately was probably about 3 months later. So
is that would that be maybe when the initial shock kind of started to wear off and you started to have some space to process?
Yes. It's I was almost numb for a long time. Yeah. It hurts, and it's just like I shut down. Like I have blocks of time after that I just don't remember. And I guess I was just on autopilot. But when I started to address and sort through some of these feelings, all I'm realizing is, that's when it hits hard sometimes. Or at least for me, that's when it hit hard.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's going to take some time after the numbness wears off of the initial shock of everything. And, just the whirlwind around when something like this happens, and sadly, all the just procedural things that have to be done around this stuff. So you're not given there's just this whirlwind of activity around the event itself. And it takes time to get some space from it. And again, we all grieve differently, and it's okay to grieve however anyone grieves. But I do appreciate that you brought up, because it is easy for us to forget that you, Cameron, or anyone else who's lost someone like this, or not that it is quite the same, but we're all dealing with grief if we have been shunned, of losing family. And this is something, again, we're all trying to work through. It's a process. It takes time. And so it's important to support one another long-term, not just at the beginning, because it doesn't just go away. And so I guess why are you telling this story? What do you maybe hope to get from it yourself? What do you hope to perhaps give to others by telling Sarah's story?
Partly, I would say it's for myself to grieve and heal. For a long time, I didn't talk about it. I just kind of bottled it up, and that was toxic. That was not good. It would come out randomly at different times, completely. It's good to talk about things. But two, I do want to say some things about Sarah. I don't know if anybody is going to watch this that knew her, but it's good to remember her for who she was, not just for what she dealt with.
Mm.
And in a way, I want to be honorable to her memory. And in addition to that, perhaps something out of this might be helpful for somebody. For me, it's enormously helpful to know that I'm not alone in certain things that I'm going through. And if I can find somebody to validate that, not just to validate my feelings, but to express something similar of a feeling that they're going through, it makes me feel like I'm not crazy. I'm not broken, and because I feel a certain way about things. This whole situation for me has been a whirlwind of emotion, and it helps sometimes to talk about it, to get it out, to share it, to hear others and how they have gone through similar things. It's a healing, and to cover over something and to forget about it is not doing ourselves justice. It's not doing Sarah justice. It's not helping anybody to just forget about it, sweep it under the rug, and move on. And I would feel that if I did that, I would perpetuate the feeling that Sarah was a disappointment. And she was far from it. She is not somebody to be merely forgotten about and move on. So,
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I'm glad that we're able to do this, and that you're given this platform to be able to speak about her. And I hope that, and one of the things I love about the podcast episodes is that they're evergreen. These are just human stories, and people can relate to them for years and years to come. Um, I still have people who are starting at episode 1, of
yeah.
Shunned, and making their way through it, right? And so for years and years, this story um, can be there to help other people who have experienced loss, or who have had relationships with people that had their struggles, whatever their struggles are, even if they're not the same. Struggles are struggles, and we all have them. And I'm
And the
glad that
nature of,
Sarah can live on through this in her own way.
yeah, and the nature of your podcast, Shunned, it's something that very few people truly understand, and the feelings behind it that people have in the middle of it. Um, we need to find strength somewhere, and we need to find understanding, and we need to find support. And it's an amazing thing that you're doing, and just very happy that everybody's unique story, they can find support and encouragement.
Oh, thank you for that. I appreciate that. Speaking of unique stories, this is kind of off the cuff here, but you have some art behind you. Would you care to explain any of it, or maybe why you set it up that way? We're going to display some other art pieces of hers and such, along with some photos of her and her big bubbly smile that you provided. Anything you want to share about the pictures behind you?
Oh, this one behind me of the tree was actually something that we had at the guest table at the wedding and reception. People would come and they'd put their finger in the paint in the different colors and kind of make leaves on the tree. I don't think you can see it, but it's got our Cameron and Sarah and our wedding date. So, but this other one to my other side is a piece of artwork that Sarah drew, and I don't know exactly when she drew it, but I believe it was around the time where she was recognizing the struggles that she had. She was acceptance, and her addiction was not something that she wanted. It caused her a lot of pain, it caused her a lot of grief, a lot of depression, and I think it's an amazing thing. Art is a beautiful medium for expressing your insides, your emotions, your feelings, who you are, and what you're going through. And it being that it's so subjective, it can speak to all of us a little bit differently. So it's what I kind of like about that is it's a language almost. It's but for a lot of her art, especially during the last part of her life, was unfortunately an expression of sadness. So,
Well, I think that art also shows the complexity of the human experience. On one hand, obviously, Sarah had some struggles, but on the other hand, that is a beautiful tree with beautiful thumbprints or fingerprints or whatever of everybody who is there. As the leaves, I love the colors. I love the two cardinals. I guess that's the two of you.
yeah,
The C+S on the tree. It's really sweet, and I think that in the end, that's the best way to remember Sarah. She. We all have struggles, but at the end of the day, we're all beautiful. We're all beautiful human beings trying to live out a story that reflects that, and that is part of all of our stories, and it's always there if you look. So we don't have to judge anyone in a binary way. We are all people just trying to get by, trying to find the beauty in life, trying to have those moments, and I'm glad that you all got to have a lot of those together.
Thank you.
Hey, it's Mike again, just breaking in here at the end of or what appeared to be the end of the interview. Again, there were just a couple minutes of stories that Cameron shared after we did the interview that we decided to also include. So I hope you'll go ahead and listen or watch these. And then after that, there will be a montage of some photos of Sarah and some of her artwork and some of the projects that she was working on that were very poignant. And I hope that we can share her art and a little bit of her and honor her in this medium.
I was thinking about some positive things that happened when we moved to the Carolinas. Like there was a park down the street, that we went to that had an overlook. I think it's like called the Eagle's Nest or Eagle's Bluff or something.
Oh.
And we went there one day and we were looking down on the clouds below. It was absolutely gorgeous. And you could see for truly 100 miles. And so she took a picture of that, posted it on Instagram, talking about the most gorgeous place she's ever seen. And just in awe and positive. And of course, I didn't talk about karaoke and down there with the politician, but it's okay. Those are really just kind of extras. That's not really about
So what was
her.
karaokeing with the politician like?
It was funny. I have suspicions that he was gay, but no confirmation. And it's like nothing wrong with that, but it's funny too because he would always sing like Elton John or other different kind of songs like that, and I'm like, he was a really cool guy. He really was. And he would always show up with his service dog, which was a golden lab. And it was like a trained emotional support animal. And
wow.
that dog went everywhere with him. Sat in karaoke, in the middle of the room, and the dog was cool. Just
Oh, that's awesome. And so what is Sarah like about? So I guess you all just all met when you were singing karaoke.
yeah.
And so did she get a kick out of the fact that Did she just like to sing with him, or was there a special thing?
She introduced me to karaoke. You know, when we first met before we got married, that's kind of something that we did, and that's could nicely illustrate her personality. When she went to karaoke, she butchered every song she sang, but she did it with such zeal and like stage presence that everybody every night would always like be standing when she sang. And like her go-to song was Journey, um and it's like it was great. Her and her best friend, they would both do it, and they would not hit a single note, right? But they were belting it out. And it's an experience to be around somebody like that. And she one of the biggest things that Sarah taught me, and I didn't mention this before, but one of the biggest things that she taught me is to love life and to have fun with it. Because first time I went to karaoke, here I am holding my phone to my ear, trying to listen to a song, being like, do I want to sing this? And then do I want to do good? And I'm totally taking the fun out of it. And she tells me, she's like, you just have fun with this. Just try, just belt, it's like, and once she did, I saw it. I'm thinking, God, I'm so tight that I have to do it right. And that's not fun. That's not fun at all. And so she actually encouraged me to go take singing lessons, but to this day, like, I just don't want to do it seriously. I don't want to try. Like, when it comes to something along that line of being artistic, I want that to be a personal thing. I want that to be something fun. And I feel that way because of her.